Our next guest is former head of digital for Red Energy. He's now the co-founder of a business called HelpPay. Rowan Wilde, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Tom. Good to be with you.
Well, thank you for joining us. Now, a bit of a kick in the guts this morning. I mean, the default electricity offer for households is rising in price by 31% this year. Is there any prospect, I don't know, in another year or so of maybe power and possibly even gas prices getting cheaper?
Yeah, look, it's a huge, as you say, kick in the guts for a lot of Victorians. Bills rising by an average of $426 will just be simply unaffordable for a lot of people. Look, the government has intervened, and the price rises that are coming through are lower than they would have been, but obviously that's still up. And the forecast at the moment is that electricity prices, the plan is that hopefully they'll come down in 2024. But of course, that relies on everything going right. And if we could take a lesson from the last few years, or even just the last week on the stock market, it's that anything can happen. Yes. And, you've got to hope.
So you say if things go right. I mean, what are the things that have to go right to bring power prices down?
Well, Energy and Climate Change Minister Chris Bowen said that about 90% of the global energy price rises last year was due to the war in Ukraine. Now, look, I'm no geopolitical expert, and doesn't necessarily mean that war needs to finish in order for prices to come down. But what we need to see is lower wholesale prices through more electricity supply in the system that isn't so easily Australians aren't subject to global prices.
But I mean, my issue, like here in Victoria, the bulk of our electricity comes from brown coal. Now, we don't trade brown coal; it's not really traded anywhere. It's not valuable enough. But I mean, there's no good reason for Victorian power prices to be going up other than we are closing down our domestic brown coal-fired power stations.
Well, look, there's certainly a shift to renewables, and unfortunately, the costs of maintaining those coal-fired power plants are excessive now, and it's just unfortunately not, if all the reporting is to be believed, of course, it's just not viable to keep them going anymore.
Well, we're told over and over and over. In fact, the Labor government, before it was elected a year ago, said, power bills will come down by $270. Instead, over the last couple of years, they've risen for the average household by as much as $700. They keep saying renewables will make prices cheaper. Well, when do we see that?
Look, that's certainly the aim, and, renewables are the cheapest form of electricity generation anywhere, but it is, of course, a question of how quickly can it be deployed to meet the demand, and then how quickly can it be delivered from where it's made to where it's needed across the national electricity market, particularly here in Victoria. How quickly can we, spin up those wind farms, get those batteries deployed, get those solar farms going at the scale we need? Because, the reality is coal power plants produce an enormous amount of energy, and it just unfortunately takes a bit of time to get the scale needed to replace that volume.
But see, therein lies the problem. That there is a very definite plan to shut down all the brown-fired coal stations over the next 10 years. I'm just not sure I believe that, solar and wind and gigantic batteries will be built at the same pace to fill the gap. And I worry that we're actually going to run short of electricity fairly soon.
Well, look, that's the $64,000 question, isn't it? It's surely there must be a plan to transition away from coal while not having blackouts and not devastating the economy. It's in no one's interest to not have enough electricity for businesses and households.
I get that, but I mean, my concern is that the individual companies, some of which are overseas owned, like Energy, which is a French company that owns one of the coal-fired power stations, they don't really care. I mean, it's not their job to make sure that Victoria has all the power it needs. They just worry about the power that they supply. Do you believe, I mean, one of the issues with renewables as well, like solar, is that, of course, it only works when the sun's shining. Now, we can store it with batteries. Do you think in the next few years we'll be able to build batteries large enough to store enough power that, a city the size of Melbourne could keep the lights on at night time?
Batteries are really good at firming peak demand. So while you will have, wind running, say, when the sun isn't shining and you've got solar going when the wind isn't blowing, what you do have is a store of energy there to make up that shortfall if other sources of electricity generation can't deliver all of the energy that's needed. It's possible. The science works out. The numbers work out. It's just a question of scale and time and speed and money.
All right, thank you for your time. Rowan Wilde there, former head of digital for Red Energy. I'll be honest, I'm not confident about this in the sense that, I am confident that electricity is going to get more expensive and it's going to be in short supply. I just don't see enough solar and wind farms and enough gigantic batteries. Nowhere on earth do we have batteries big enough to power cities. And yet, in the middle of winter in Melbourne, you get plenty of times when there's no wind and at night no sun. If we get rid of coal-fired power, then really we will need gigantic batteries, and I just don't believe they exist. Anyway, that's the future.